HVAC 360 is brought to you today by Murphy's Law. Everything going smoothly? Feeling good about your project? Don't worry. Murphy's Law is on the case, and before you know it, you'll be behind schedule and angrier than a wet hornet. The employees at Murphy's Law remind you, smile, it could be worse. Oh wait, it is now. Murphy's Law, making things go wrong since 1949. Hey, what's up? Welcome back. This is episode number 85. I'm Matt Nelson, your host for HVAC 360, helping you go further and faster in the field of HVAC. In these podcasts, I'm going to be sharing stories, interviewing experts, and multiplying your HVAC knowledge. And if that weren't enough and it leaves you wanting more, definitely go and subscribe to my list at HVAC360.com. In addition to sending out bonus material, I am also going to be sending out, like I did this time, notices for continuing education opportunities. So go to the website, sign up for there, and I will be sending out more of those in the upcoming weeks. So what's up this week? I'm going to take this opportunity to recap the webcast that I watched over the weekend. And the ASHRAE Webcast was Making Energy Efficiency a Reality. So I watched that. I tried to watch it on my website, and this is kind of a tip for you. If you watch it on your laptop, it probably works for you. It didn't work for me so well. But I ended up watching on my phone, and of course I didn't want to watch it that small, so I kind of just threw it up on the big screen using some mirroring technology, and that worked out great. So it was like watching a TV program in the comfort of my own home. Well, speaking of TV, let's take a break before we get into it for a brief word from our sponsor. All right, in this podcast, I'm going to go through the top 12 takeaways that I had from the 2018 ASHRAE Webcast, Making Energy Efficiency a Reality. Now, on the panel, they had a great panel for this one. It was Tom Durkin, Mark Frankel, and Chris Mathis. Chris Mathis has always been a great speaker. Actually, I think he's been on a couple of these webinars before, and he doesn't fall short on this one either. So, kind of giving you a little description that I've cribbed from the ASHRAE notes to describe this webcast is advanced technology alone solving the case for energy efficiency? Delivering meaningful energy efficiency in building often requires debunking myths about building products, performance, and solutions. This webcast will focus on strategies and policies that dive into deep efficiency goals. All right, so it was a great webcast, 3 hours long. They had some Q&A multiple times during the session. If you've never watched one, I would suggest you watch one. You might be a little bit afraid saying, hey, ASHRAE is putting these on. It's going to be, engineering, jargon left and right. But really, I think the presenters, the intent for these webcasts is to make it more understandable and palatable and accessible to a wider audience. So you don't really have to be that technical to understand and get something out of these webcasts. So, all right, with that, I'm going to get into my top 12 takeaways. All right, number one, in this world of growing energy demands, we're still relying way too much on fossil fuels. As the global population grows, we're still relying way too much on those finite oil, gas, coal resources to generate electricity. And it's kind of hard for people to really understand, and they did a great analogy where if you don't understand about the pollution potential of buildings, realize that the tailpipe isn't coming out of the building showing you how much energy it's using. It's off in the distance. So our building tailpipes are really remote, and they're at the generating facility. That was a kind of interesting analogy that I liked. All right, number two, Tom Durkin's 50-70-95 axiom. This relates actually to the importance of fresh air. But realize that even though it's critical for a healthy environment, that it's also responsible for 50% of the cooling costs, 70% of the heating cost, and 95% of the potential humidity problems in a building. So it was very important. Tom kind of stressed the fact that you match your building operation to actual occupancy. Kind of, don't use any more fresh air than you absolutely have to. Number 3, when we solve energy efficiency problems, we need to really get away from jumping onto the latest and greatest technology. Not only that, but we need to get away from using the same tool all the time. If there's a favorite technology that we like going to, don't just keep using that. That might not be the right tool for the projects. So take a look at that. Number 4, when solving energy efficiency problems, develop a wider peripheral vision. Really, this was exemplified by Tom's case of a university project where they're doing an HVAC retrofit, and they ended up replacing the district steam that was coming into the building with a plant inside the building. But they just didn't stop there, because there were 3 adjacent buildings that they could actually incorporate into this new plant. So not only could they add a couple buildings onto this, that ended up saving a lot of steam main that they could have just decommissioned and eliminated out of the whole central plant of the university. So there was an opportunity there when you just widened, you didn't focus just on the building, but you widened it just slightly to include some adjacent possibilities. So I thought that was pretty good. Number 5, be wary of picking just the low-hanging fruit on your energy efficiency projects. I thought this was kind of counterintuitive, but it really makes sense in the fact that when you're looking at energy efficiency projects, don't just go for the low cost, no cost, and gobble those savings up right away. Because what you end up doing is you leave behind the longer payback items. And I know that ESCOs do this all the time. They bundle savings from short term, like energy, like lighting retrofits. They'll bundle that with roofing or boilers or windows or something that has a longer payback. Things that degrade and need to be replaced, but they typically don't get replaced until they fail. So as an energy efficiency project, use that opportunity to bundle those items to make that a better solution for your client. Number 6, beware of ghost energy. Now, I think Tom did a great job, and it's funny about the different items that he had. As far as plug loads are, huge ghost energy consumers. Low delta T syndrome, which a lot of people may not quite understand what that is, but it has some significant effects on your central plant. So if you've never understood what is a low delta T, maybe you need to read up on that and become more familiar with that. And he named a couple others, but check out the webcast for those as well. Number 7, always look to grow the size of your toolbox. Sometimes you really, you can engage, you can actually increase the size of your team and engage others to increase the size of your toolbox. But you as an engineer always have to be looking at growing your toolbox. And by that I mean that you need to be increasing your knowledge, not only about the systems and how they go in, but also new technologies. So really, it's kind of all what we are all about here at HVAC 360. Number 8, a couple of areas that are hot in or are receiving more focus. The fact that ASHRAE 90.1, we're driving towards that near net zero kind of baseline, but they run out of things to really focus on. And what is really the large drivers now, once we take care of the right system and the right, the building enclosure and things like that, things that are becoming more popular and more, I guess, more talked about now is occupant behavior and also building operations. I guess those two things. Now, occupant behavior, I know that like in schools, you can get into competitions about who can save more energy, and really to affect occupant behavior. They were talking about how you need to have some immediate feedback for them, whether it be a heads-up display on a TV saying how much energy the building's consuming, and things like that. But you really have to engage them with some active feedback to really be able to affect some change there. And then obviously building operations, not trying to minimize the runtime. The best energy savings is the kilowatt that you don't use. So being able to shut things down and operate your buildings in the most efficient way, and really, educating the end users to be able to do that. Number 9, energy efficiency is less costly than new generation. So energy efficiency, for you outside of the U.S., energy efficiency has a lot of different places in the U.S. where it's kind of big and prominent. California being one with Title 24. Other places like New York, and those are where the major population centers are. But I've always been curious about the Pacific Northwest up in Washington State. Is why was there so much energy efficiency projects happening there? I mean, a lot of the building commissioning actually comes out of the Pacific Northwest. And why was that? And it wasn't really until Mark Frankel actually explained that the Pacific Northwest actually, way back when, had a situation. They understood that the region was growing, and they predicted energy demand that was going to climb higher and higher, and they were going to supplement this with nuclear energy. So they went through a whole bond issue trying to raise funds and things like that to support this bond issue. But the problem is that their energy consumption didn't grow that much. So the whole bond issue fell flat on its face, and through this kind of fiscal emergency, they were required to come up with energy efficiency strategies to help them save money, instead of, basically, like I said, instead of generating more energy, let's save energy so we can actually add population and increase growth. And if we work on saving energy, then our electrical generation demand doesn't change. So that was interesting to hear that talked about with Mark. On the design front, Tom threw in there too, hey, why don't you focus on making sure that adding valves and bypasses to a system to be able to work on the system, to be able to remove pieces or fix pieces or upgrade pieces without having to drain the whole system. So this was kind of more of a hydronic approach, or a hydronic tip from Tom, to be able to, focus on, adding more valves. And this comes into play. I've seen it a lot of times, and it's a big headache when you can't change a system or modify a system in a way without draining the whole thing, which is a big headache. Even working on it. So you got a leak in a wing of a school building. You have to shut the whole system down, or can you isolate that wing and work on it from there? So that was kind of the thrust of that highlight. Number 11, solar panels really cut into the base load of electrical generation. Now, I had never really heard about this, and I think this is kind of where you get into trouble with net zero energy buildings, is that you start cutting into the base load. So to kind of explain it to you in words, and he does a better job with the graphs, Mark does, but it was, for electrical generators, you have a base load that's so many kilowatts, and then so that's constant, that's 24/7, 365, that's always going. Think of that like nuclear plants, just kind of having this constant power output, but it's always being consumed. And that's the thing, you generate it, you consume it. With the the spike in the midday, you're starting to get into a mid-rise kind of a middle spectrum, where they're they're adding on generation plants and things that they can start up within a couple of hours to be able to handle additional loads. And then they have the peaking plants, which are the most costliest, the dirtiest, and the quickest to come online and go off. And that's really what the power company ideally would like to just stay with this base load if they absolutely could. That way they could kind of design their system. You have this base load, but at least get rid of the peaks up at the top. Unfortunately, what happens with the PV is the PV actually at the midday generates so much electricity in locations that it actually dips into that base load. So it's like they're generating power that can't be consumed. So it's, where does it go? And you get into situations, really weird situations where the energy cost is negative in certain markets, and you actually end up paying people to consume electricity, which is strange, but what can you do with it? You have to do something with it. And I think that in the future is where you're going to get a lot into the energy storage solutions, where you can generate that energy and kind of use it kind of off peak, so you're not affecting the base load of your electrical grid. But I thought that was interesting, and Mark does a great job of explaining that. All right, number 12, the best performing buildings have an integrated team. Now, a team that doesn't work in silos. Now, the integrated approach, I think, gets a lot of lip service, and I think that a lot of teams need to develop skills to effectively integrate a project. The problem is, I think a lot of people, they see this, shiny new word, and they're like, yeah, that's right. We deliver integrated design services, and they don't really understand what that is. And their intention is, okay, we're going to have a meeting, and everybody's going to be there. We're going to talk about it, and then everybody leaves, and they're going to revert to what they've always been doing, the status quo. And that's wrong. The integrated team approach, is really this continuous, like a continuous meeting that happens for a project, and that's when you get the best performing buildings. When you really understand from design all the way through construction and operation of a building, everybody's there learning, trying to make sure that the building performs the best that it possibly can. All right. I have a bonus number 13 for you. These are some of the last words that our panel had. First off was the the age-old adage: nobody wants the lowest cost doctor to operate them. Nobody wants the lowest cost lawyer defending them. But all the time, people are getting the lowest cost engineers to design their buildings. Now, you got to look at the quality. If you want your building to be able to perform, you got to pay a little bit extra for it. I mean, it doesn't have to be a lot necessarily. You don't have to get the world's greatest expert, but I think that there's a lot of firms out there that are not the lowest cost option, and they provide a much better value for you as an owner. As Chris is known to say, these buildings, should be built to last 100 years. So you don't want a designer that's going to design you a building that's going to, break after 10. Yeah, you just don't want that. Number 2 from the last words, engineers need to keep up with the codes and new technologies. So that's really focused back on that toolbox topic to be able to, grow your knowledge base and understand what your different options are to provide those best solutions. Again, be an engineer that is not the low-cost option. Be an engineer that will deliver the value to your client. And the last one is prioritize delivering building performance more often. So that's really the essence of the whole webcast. You need to prioritize that, because if you don't make it a priority, then it's going to drop off the table. So you need to prioritize delivering that building performance more often. All right, well, those are my takeaways. I got a little spoiler alert, or I should say, before I spoil this, remember that this webcast is still available for continuing education credits up until May 4th, 2018. The spoiler alert that I mentioned was for the 2019 ASHRAE Webcast, and that is titled The Future of Refrigerants in Unitary and VRF Systems. So, all right, they're looking for speakers and panelists for that now. So if you think you qualify, hey, throw your hat in the ring and see how that works out. All right, well, that does it for this week. Thanks to ASHRAE for putting on this annual webcast. Check out my show notes, and for some other links, you can go to the show notes, and that's at hvac360.com/85. You can find that at. All right, thanks so much for listening. I hope this was helpful. If you know anybody who is trying to get into the energy efficiency sector and wants to increase their knowledge, please share this episode with them. They may even thank you for doing them a solid. Also, as I mentioned at the top of the show, please subscribe to my list if you haven't already, hvac360.com, for more nuggets of goodness on a weekly basis. And I'm going to send out those continuing education notifications for different seminars, different opportunities that you can have from time to time. All right, and if that's not all, if you have more time on your hands, I'd certainly be greatly honored if you'd consider leaving me a 5-star review on iTunes. That certainly helps us with the rankings. All right, well, that's it for this episode of HVAC 360. I'm your host, Matt Nelson, helping you go further, faster in the field of HVAC. And as always, know what you build and share what you know.